So here's a sticky wicket for you. We're coming up on Easter, and if you are post-church, what are you going to teach your kids about Jesus? Now today is Ash Wednesday, so it's the first day of the Lenten season, 40 days leading up to the death and resurrection of Christ. And while our family is no longer a church-going family, Jesus as a teacher and a guide is still a huge part of our heritage, and his teachings create the shape of all the values that we are teaching to our kids are caught up in the teaching and examples of Jesus. The values we're teaching our kids also reflect the teachings of Buddha and the teachings of Judaism, because there's so much overlap between the religious traditions. And yet we come out of a Christian background. So Jesus is a huge part of our heritage. So how do we pass that on to our kids in a way that is rooted in our heritage and respectful of our heritage, but authentic to our current beliefs and values, and creative enough to grow with us as a family and to allow the kids to grow in their understanding of Jesus as they mature into adults? One of the things you can do to teach the life and stories of Jesus to young children is to gather up picture books that reflect the parables of Jesus and the story of Jesus's birth and life in ways that you feel comfortable telling. And with especially young children, you can always kind of edit as you go along if there's a phrase or two in there that you don't feel comfortable with, because, they're just looking at the pictures and listening to your story, and you could edit it along. So what we used to do when our children were very young was we would use these 40 days of Lent to be 40 stories about Jesus. And every night we would read to them either a storybook about a parable that Jesus told, or a storybook about Jesus. And we also had a Stations of the Cross prayer book for kids that my daughter, who's 14, just told me this weekend that she totally remembers sitting at night with her dad and reading through that Stations of the Cross book, and that it was one of her favorite things about Easter time. And remember that at this young age, everything precious and good comes in a storybook. To be read to is most kids' favorite thing, or one of their favorite things. The charm of a beautiful picture book really sparks their imagination, and of everything good, fairies and fantasy lands and being able to ride in a rocket ship comes out of a picture book. So if Jesus comes out of a picture book, that seems pretty good too. Now, as your kids get a little older and they enter the crafting stage, one of the things that you can do is to set up the tradition of having an Easter or a springtime tree. So, they sell these trees at Michael's and Target and stuff. They're just bare branched trees. Some of them light up. And, you're supposed to hang these little ceramic Easter eggs on them. What we started to do with our Easter tree, since the kids already understood the concept of a Christmas tree, was to set up this Easter tree and to decorate it. And we would invite other post-church and semi-church friends and other people, Relig-ish people for whom church was not part of their background, over every week during Lent for supper, once a week. And then we would make these ornaments for the Easter tree. And as we made the ornaments around stories Jesus told or stories about Jesus, the kids would get to hear other members of their community share why this story or that lesson was important to them. And then people who didn't have Christianity as part of their Relig-ish heritage could also make up things about what was important, to make ornaments saying what was important to them about this season, about springtime and equinox and rebirth and new life. So they got sort of this really inclusive picture of what was important about this time of year, both our heritage in telling stories about Jesus this time of year and this natural year importance of new life and rebirth. And the two dovetailed together really nicely and began to teach the kids about interfaith and coexistence. And then each year, as we got the ornaments out of the box, the kids would remember the stories and the people that told them and have a sense of community around this eclectic belief system that we were creating outside of the institution. Now, for older kids, that cut, color, and paste crafting thing might fade a little. They tend to go through a stage where that's not as interesting as it used to be. and they want to be treated a little bit more on the adult level. So what we're doing now with our children during this Lenten Easter season is we've invited one other Relig-ish family who has Christianity as part of their Relig-ish background to come over every Saturday during Lent. And each of the parents is going to take turns presenting why Jesus is important to them through a story Jesus told or a story about Jesus. You may be noticing that theme. And then we'll provide an activity around that. And we're going to do it this year. Just the parents are going to do little presentations. And then next year we'll invite the kids to present as well if they would like. And we're going to do it around brunch because, all the church in our house has to be centered around the table. And we're going to do it for 4 weeks coming up to Easter. And hopefully the kids will begin to see how adults they respect have incorporated the teachings of Jesus in their life in a way that is inclusive and respectful of other faiths, and is respectful of their own heritage, but is authentic to who they are today and what their beliefs are today. So if the stories of Jesus are something that you want to pass on in your Relig-ish family, I hope that this idea around sharing storybooks for young children, creating a craft project and connected to story for older kids, and then creating some sort of dynamic with wise elders that you trust sharing their experiences with Jesus gives you some ideas that might be adaptable and right fit for you and your Relig-ish family. I'm curious, what are your Easter plans with your Relig-ish family this year? How will you celebrate with your clan? What stories will you pass on? And what's important to you at this time of year? Do tell us in the comments, because there ain't nowhere to go but together. And until we meet again, get curious, trust your gut, and above all, live from a place of love. Amen? Amen.